Hello and welcome to Pearl Magazine. Tonight, a look at how regulation in the mental health industry could affect patients, and then a visit to the Nordics where we see how esports has developed there.
According to a survey, 1 in 6 people in Hong Kong suffers from mental health issues. On top of that, there is a cultural stigma attached to seeking psychological services here.
That's right, James. And actually, there's reportedly only one psychologist for every 12,000 people here in Hong Kong. And this new regulation could whittle that number down even further.
Well, but if regulation is what's needed, shouldn't it be implemented?
Definitely, it should be, but it all depends on what exactly that regulation is. And from what I understand, there is a number of different factions with opposing views in this. Victor Ting finds out why and if the regulation will ultimately benefit the most important party, the patient. In March this year, a 52-year-old grandmother living with her daughter and grandson was arrested and charged with killing her 6-year-old grandson. The grandmother was suffering from depression while the child had a hyperactivity disorder. The tragic case sparked a discussion on mental health in the city. But do patients and those in need know how to find the right help?
Public would be very confused. We have seen actually patients that has been served by people who are not qualified in using methods that may not be helpful, and this has delayed the treatment. Some has given wrong diagnosis.
Hong Kong currently has no regulation for those practicing clinical psychology. Kitty Wu is a clinical psychologist registered under the Hong Kong Psychological Society, the Division of Clinical Psychology, or DCP. But registration is voluntary, so unregistered psychologists can still practice in Hong Kong. She says anyone, even those without a degree, can call themselves a psychologist. In the 2016 policy address, the then Chief Executive C.Y. Leung announced the government would launch a voluntary accredited register scheme covering 15 non-statutorily regulated healthcare professions. But it has yet to happen in the clinical psychology sector.
So we're starting on a voluntary basis, which is, I think, a start. Well, I certainly support this scheme to be mandatory. I think because it is not only about the professionals, it's about the public accessing professional quality care.
I just want to ask any one of you in here, have heard about the topics, ethics. Okay, show hands, okay. Majority, okay, that's very good.
Joseph Su is a clinical psychologist registered under a different professional body, the Hong Kong Association of Doctors in Clinical Psychology, or HKA-DCP.
Any story that you heard about our practice, or maybe the therapist is not competent for the service? Any example that make our discussion more interesting?
I think if one provides some kind of service that requires specialized training, even that therapist do not have that training, but claim that he or she can do the service, right? That is not a good protection for the patient.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's very true.
1 out of 6 people currently suffer from mental health issues in Hong Kong. So regulating professionals is key to providing quality service. Joseph says the public has a right to know the qualifications of their doctor, but he thinks the professional community needs to come to an agreement on how and who should qualify people. Earlier this year, both the DCP and HKA-DCP submitted their own accredited register proposals to the government. Members from the first organization are mostly graduates of Hong Kong University and Chinese University, while those in the HKA-DCP are mostly from City University. The two proposals have major differences in academic and clinical standard requirements, including the number of practicum hours, the need for a bachelor's degree in psychology, and whether on-site supervision by a clinical psychologist is required. In June, the DCP and its proposal were chosen to undergo an assessment to see if it was qualified to act as the sole regulator for the sector. It is still ongoing. While both groups claim their proposal is in line with international standards, Joseph says the DCP's proposal will mean HKA DCP members won't be able to get onto the accredited register.
Maybe it's a protection. The protection is if more CP come in, the market can be shared with the colleagues. That could be some people concerned.
It is inevitable that not everyone can get into this standard. If anyone can come and get to the register, this will actually destroy the standard, which is the crux of protecting public interest.
But Joseph says the system must be open to accept those from other educational systems, especially since Hong Kong is an international city. He adds those qualified in other countries might end up rejected by this new system. In the US, one must fulfill up to 6,000 supervised hours, depending on the state, before they can be licensed to practice, but they don't require a bachelor's degree in psychology. Under the DCP, 1,760 hours are required, plus the bachelor's degree.
We have put in transitional arrangement to accommodate people who may not be up to that standard, but who can provide proof of practice, and besides that, to provide remedial training to people to enter into the register through grandparenting clause.
Have you seen the petition lately? This is the link to the petition. I've signed it already, so
have I.
It says that it's 927.
The scheme also affects practitioners trained overseas. Charmaine Shroff studied clinical psychology in the UK and US, but is uncertain if she qualifies for the Hong Kong register because she hasn't obtained a license to practice overseas. She was hoping to do so when she returned to Hong Kong. She has formed the International Psychologists Concern Group with others and launched an online petition to raise awareness of the issue.
We tend to deal with quite different populations. So while the local graduates from here tend to work in maybe more government organizations and deal with local Cantonese-speaking populations, we, or myself at least, tend to deal with expats living in Hong Kong and do therapy conducted in English and not Cantonese. So I think there's probably quite a difference in the way that we were trained in terms of cultural competence and language competence.
She adds that having an understanding of a patient's culture is important since they're dealing with people's thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Kitty says a good accreditation scheme will attract quality mental health practitioners to come to Hong Kong.
Because we welcome overseas qualifications who have equivalent standard with that of the local one to the register.
But Charmaine worries that the current scheme will actually drive out existing foreign-trained clinical psychologists and limit access to the psychological services of expats. She is keen to sit down with the DCP to iron out their differences. Fernando thinks the government's hands-off approach isn't working.
In this situation, the clinical psychologists are really not being able to work out a consensus. The government should step in early on.
The scheme is set to launch by the end of this year, but the ongoing row in the sector is threatening to derail the timetable, if not the whole process. Meantime, it takes anywhere from 10 months to 2 years to see a clinical psychologist in Hong Kong's public health system. Fernando suggests a complete overhaul may be necessary to solve the impasse. This includes setting up a new commission to oversee the whole process.
And I think the government would need to pick people from both sides and also from overseas so that we would have a more balanced view in this body and give them a timeline to work it out. I think that would make it work eventually.
Whether the factions will be able to sort out their differences is yet to be seen, but keeping the welfare of their patients in mind should be top priority for all parties involved.
You know, with these complex public issues, it's sometimes easy to lose sight of the real goal, which is to help those in need.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I just hope they don't get distracted by the technicalities and can stay focused. Up next, we visit Sweden to take a look at how esports is progressing there. Be right back.